Today's episode is called The Biggest Lie in the Tabletop Games Business. And that lie is some variation of this thought. You can't really be successful or make a substantial amount of money running a game store. Now, if you've been in this industry for any amount of time, you've probably heard some version of this. Maybe you've even thought it yourself. I've been putting together this podcast for over 10 years now, and I can recall several guests more or less saying the same thing. The idea that running a game store or launching a tabletop game is a passion project at best. But here's the truth. The belief is not only false, it's holding back countless game store owners, creators, and entrepreneurs from achieving the success that they could be having. Let me caveat this real quick. The folks repeating this belief online mean well. Starting a game store has a notorious and well-earned reputation of having a low bar for entry, which means that most would-be store owners are underfunded and underprepared for the realities of running a retail business. Finding hard numbers on this is tough, but I would estimate that for every game store that exists right now and has been open for 3 years or more, there are between 10 and 20 stores that didn't last more than a year or two. And those failed store owners, whatever the cause of that failure, they disappear from the conversation. So we have a bit of a survivorship bias situation going on in online retailer groups. So the general advice given online when someone asks about starting up their own shop is don't do it. The advice givers know how difficult the business is to build and grow, so it is correct to discourage someone who might not be ready to just put off their dream or to try something else. I'm not arguing against that. I think recommending that a prospective store owner come to the table with more resources and knowledge of the business will only increase their odds of success. That's kind of the whole point of the podcast, trying to increase their odds of success. But that's not what I'm talking about in this episode. I'm referring to this ingrained belief/mindset of game store owners, just generally as an industry, that it's just not possible to become truly wealthy to running a game store, to build something massive. One manifestation of this mindset is that store owners discourage would-be store owners from entering the market in the first place. But the side effect is this also subconsciously limits their own potential. There's a quote attributed to Henry Ford that encapsulates this really well. Whether you believe you can or can't, you're right. If you believe deep down that the best you can do with your business is to muddle along and provide yourself and your team with a basic level of income, you're not only wrong, you're doing yourself a disservice and the people who rely on you. Let's get into the psychology of this for a moment. There's a psychological phenomenon called the Pygmalion effect, where higher expectations lead to an increase in performance. It suggests that when someone, for example, a teacher or a manager or a leader or whatever, expects a person to perform well, that person is more likely to meet those expectations due to the positive reinforcement and belief in their abilities. The concept is named after Pygmalion, a figure from Greek mythology who sculpted a statue that he fell in love with, which was later brought to life by the goddess Aphrodite. Positive expectations can influence behavior, motivation, and self-esteem, leading to improved outcomes. Well, this applies to more than just the people you have working for you. In many ways, you are your own manager. The things you believe and say get internalized over time, and they shape the actions that you take in the future. If you believe you're destined for great things, that you are smart, talented, and capable of making a big impact on the world, you are way more likely to actually make that a reality. There is also the opposite phenomenon, fittingly known as the golem effect. When low expectations are set for an individual or yourself, performance tends to decline, leading to a negative self-fulfilling prophecy. By operating under the assumption and belief that a game store isn't a real business or can never really become a way to have more than like a middle-class lifestyle, you are constructing the golem one piece at a time. Let's break this down. Why does this belief exist? First, tabletop gaming has always been a community-driven hobby. Most of us are nerds at heart, myself included. And up until recently, our hobbies were looked at with a side eye by most of society. We banded together to create our own communities of people who share the love and passion for games in the same way that we did. And if I had to armchair psychoanalyze again, and it's my show, so I get to do what I want, I would say most game stores were created out of a desire to create a safe space to enjoy the things we enjoy and to allow others who feel the same way to gather together. A consequence of this is the business existing and functioning as a business is often secondary. A game store is usually filled by passion, creativity, and a love for games. But somewhere along the line, passion becomes synonymous with poverty, as if loving what you do means you shouldn't expect to make money doing it. This is often entangled with the dual problems of feeling like you have to serve the community first, with making money becoming the secondary priority, and the people in your community becoming friends. How can that be a problem? Having your customers become friends is one of the nicer aspects of running a game store. You are surrounded by people that love the same things you do, and they want to talk about them all day. It can be great, but it can also blur the lines between customer and friend. And friends expect special treatment from you. You're not a stranger, so they should expect special treatment from you in some ways. But as a business, it can be awkward when a friend expects you to give them a deal or give someone else a deal. Do you give the friend what they're asking for and you sacrifice your margins to maintain that friendship? Or do you risk the relationship and tell them no? If your friendships are the top priority of your business, you will likely lean towards the first option. Integrity is really hard. Not keeping it will erode your ability to stay in business, though, as well as your perception of yourself and what you should be doing to pursue your goals. And I'm not saying your relationships with people aren't important and you should be a ruthless capitalist who only thinks about profit margins. Relationships have a place in the hierarchy of how you make decisions and run your game store, but they cannot be the deciding factor. The game stores that operate on the thinnest of margins in order to serve the community and make their friends happy almost always inevitably fail. Second, most game store owners' goals are just simply too small. I think this is gradually changing as the industry has become much more professional over the last 10 years. But there is still the afterimage of the idea of the local game store in people's minds that shapes their perception of what's possible. And maybe this is a downside to the moniker, the friendly local game store. Language matters, and the words we use to talk about something simultaneously program our minds and how we think about it. There's something inherently small about the local game store, and maybe that's why most store owners aim for moderate success instead of swinging for the fences. And at this point, I've helped several game stores in my work with their marketing and seen the inner workings of what is possible in the business. I've seen stores go from $0 to over $500,000 in yearly revenue in the space of a year. I've seen game stores that have done 7-figure revenue numbers with 8 figures in sight. Teams of dozens of people making a decent wage. Like, really, how many Star City games, game nerds, cool stuff, face-to-face games, and card kingdoms have to exist before people feel like, yeah, there's some real money to be made in the games business? The difference between those who struggle and those who succeed often comes down to mindset and strategy. Are you treating your store like a business or a clubhouse? Are you investing in marketing, building an online presence, and diversifying your revenue streams? Are you managing your inventory and putting in the work to actually make it work for you? Or are you stuck in the mindset of, this is just how it is. This is what I expect, and I don't think I can get any more out of this. Here is the truth. You can absolutely make a substantial income as a tabletop game store owner. Success is 100% within your reach, but it first requires the right mindset. If you hold yourself back because you don't believe it's really possible, you're only going to create that self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, of course, you need a ton of other skills in order to build a business that achieves those ambitions too. You need to embrace modern marketing, understand your customers, and be willing to innovate. You need a great operation with people who can sell. You need to be able to cultivate a strong community. You need organizational skills. You need to be able to spot the winning products and manage inventory correctly. You need to maintain your passion for games, and you need to be able to persevere through those inevitable hard times. But without the vision and belief that you can actually build something great, you are going to constantly undermine what your game store could be. And that's it for today's episode of the Manaverse Podcast. Welcome to 2025. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more game store owners discover the show. And if you are ready to take your store to the next level and you want to talk about how we can help your game store grow with some ridiculously effective digital marketing, head over to manaversaga.com/MMA and let's make it happen. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep gaming.